Hello everyone, do-it-yourself gourmet back today, and what we're going to do is make a little bit of beer batter for dipping vegetables or little bits of meat in, or even cheese if you prefer. So what we've got here to start out, 2 eggs, about medium in size, 1/4 teaspoon of white pepper that was put right there to let sit for about 10 minutes. That way it soaks into the egg. I've actually found that kind of spreads out the flavor a little bit. So to start out, we're going to give a nice light mixing to the egg, not quite a beating, and we're going to get that started. Now, I've got a cup of flour, all-purpose flour, not bread flour, not cake flour. And so we've got this mixed up, and so what we're going to do is sprinkle little bits of flour in at a time. You can sift the flour if you'd like it to be extra smooth. Otherwise, just put it a little bit at a time until the mixture gets to a nice, smooth consistency. Now what you're doing, and you want to do it little bits at a time, is temper in the flour, because you'll find it does like to lump up. And that's one of the reasons when making beer batter, I do actually prefer to use a fork, because in doing so, you give yourself a little bit of a chance to combat some of those lumps that like to form along the way. And what you can do to help get rid of those lumps, if you should happen upon them, is kind of take them, isolate them, push them up against the side, and get them worked out, because once they break up, then they get themselves right into the mixture. Now that's why I said sifting does help to work that out, because when you sift, the little bits clumps that are here, they tend to get worked out in the sifting process. So we're going to mix that a bit, get the lumps out, put a little more flour in as we go. Nice and soft goes the hand. That way you're not contributing to any lumpage, at least not any more than you have to. And you work it in nice and slow. A good beer batter, and a good batter in general, takes time with the egg. Now you're not whipping it or beating it particularly hard, but you are getting it in there and letting it mix up with that flour so that they start to form a nice thick paste. And it's in that thick paste that you're going to use the batter, well, you're going to use the beer to make the batter. So we're going to get a little more going in there, little bits at a time. There we go. Nice bits, mild folding action, somewhere between that and a mild whisking also works. If you have a whisk, feel free to use it. I find that tends to incorporate a little more air, so more power to you however you do it. But getting this together is the end result that you're looking for, so that you can start adding the beer in. And now you only have to be a little bit on the gentle side at first. Once it starts to take it up, you can add it in a bit faster, because in the mixing process, it'll start to help homogenize itself. You get it around the sides, pick up the bits off the end. Fork also acts like a good spatula if it has to. You got a mix there. Now, the amount of flour that you use is going to help depend on how thick you're going to end up making that batter. Because if you like a thick batter, you want to use more flour. And you also want to use a little less liquid. That way it sticks on nice and thick. But if you're looking for a nice light fry, well, then you're going to want to dilute it a little bit. And the flour will be the bridge in between the egg and the water that helps the thickness hold on to the food that you're frying. So we're going to put a little bit more in there, and then we're going to start adding our liquid in. And our liquid in today's case happens to be a bit of Guinness Stout. We're going to make it a lightly thick batter, kind of like a black and tan. And what that is going to do is give us that full-bodied flavor without being a hard bit to swallow. So we've got ourselves a nice, decent, thick-looking mixture at this point. Clumps are broken up. We've worked them on the side. We'll add just the littlest touch. And I'd say in total, that works out to about 1/4 cup of flour. So that way, when you're measuring, you can know approximately where I took it at. 1/4 cup of flour seems right for 2 medium eggs, 1/4 teaspoon of white pepper. And now, since we have a moment, and we've gotten past the part where the eggs are mixed in, we're going to add a couple of dashes, probably 1/8 teaspoon, when you count it all up, of powdered garlic, because that tends to taste nice inside of the batter, especially when it's had a chance to sit there and soak in for a moment. Now we're getting to the part where we like to have it the most, where we can pour the beer in. And I've got about, I'd say 8 ounces inside of this bottle of beer, and we're going to work it little by little. Now we pour it just a tad at a time. You don't want to get it too foamed up. And actually, that's one of the other reasons why I do prefer to work with a fork when I'm making this particular batter, because the whisk tends to cause the beer to get foamy inside, and that's not really what I'm looking to do with it here. Because a beer batter, if you want to have that flavor in there, where it's still got a little bit of that effervescence, and you can't whip it out while you're mixing it up. And this here is about good for, I'd say, a dozen zucchini slices, maybe 18. Good 12 mushrooms that are finger to thumb size. You know, if you put it in a circle in between the head of the mushroom, looks like that. And then, when these are ready to go, you're going to want to make sure that you have a nice hot oil. I recommend canola or grapeseed. Olive oil definitely wouldn't hold up in this instance. And then you dip it in and you let it fry real quick. Now that's about where we're going to go with it. We're going to test one out. But that is our beer batter. And that will serve you well for when you're frying up something tasty. Do it yourself gourmet, folks. We'll see you next time.